Good morning, everyone. Today we shall take up the topic on arrays. So far, we are the data that we are using, the data types that we are using in our programs. They are what are called as scalars. For example, if you see max.c program, so this is the max.c program. So here we are using three variables. We are reading a stream of data from the input and from the keyboard, and we are trying to compute the max of the series of numbers that we have seen from the keyboard. And these variables, these are called as scalar variables. So these are called as scalars. N, max, ret value, these are called as scalar variables. And now we will see a new data type called as arrays through an example. Let's go to this program. So here on line 7, you can see a data type declaration int a of n. And I want you to appreciate the fact this n is a macro. So technically this definition, this statement is equivalent to int a of 10, because by the time this statement goes to the compiler, the C preprocessor will replace the 10 with 10, and the statement that actually goes to the compiler is int a of 10. So what it tells is we are declaring a variable by name a. It is what is called as an array. It's an array of 10 elements, and the type of each element of the array is an integer. So in terms of the memory, if you go see memory, this is your memory. So in terms of the memory, what the memory will be allocated, like for example here, so this is your RAM or main memory. So a of 0, I think integers are allocated 4 bytes. So a of 0 is allocated 4 bytes, followed by that you have the element a of 1, which is again allocated 4 bytes, a of 2, which is allocated 4 bytes, so on and so forth. And indexing starts from 0 and it ends at 9. So the declaration of the statement on line number 7 tells the compiler to allocate an array of 10 integer elements. And in order to access each of these elements, we use this notation. A of 0 means 0th element of the array. A of 1 means the first element of the array, so on and so forth. So let's try to see the addresses of, let's write a program actually to understand the layout of these elements. Int I'm just printing the address of I think I hope it works, that format specifier. So here we are writing a program to print the address of different array elements, and we will see what happens. I think it's long unsigned. Some format specifier. Okay, so it's I think it is right, that format specifier. I didn't use it before. but let's see. Array layout.c. Yeah, it is saying what should we use. Maybe %u might be good enough, or maybe I'll use %p. Okay, let's. So now, if you see, it is printing. Sorry, it should be a of %d. So actually, maybe I should print it. I'll try to print it in decimal form also. It is not that problem, I think. Yeah, so %p is for pointer, expects %u expects argument. Oh, okay, that is the error. Huh? Expects long unsigned int. Okay, got it. That's what. So please don't pay too much attention to a few things that I'm doing, but what we are trying to do is print. Just use %u. Even %u is also, yeah. Anyway, let's stick to this and we will see what happens. So now we used it. We used the address second time also, Vivek. You can see now. So we are printing the address of the array element a of I in two ways. One in hexadecimal format, other in decimal format. That's what we are doing here. So, and you can see the address of a of 0. If you see, forget about this prefix because, yeah, so you can see this prefix is the same for everything. But if you just pay attention to the lower order 2 digits, so the lower order 2 digit for the address a of 0 is 8. For a of 1, it is 12. And for a of 2, it is 16. The reason why it is incrementing by 4 bytes is so a of 0 is allocated 4 bytes of memory. So a of 0 is allocated 4 bytes of memory. For the sake of simplicity, I just say this is yeah, some prefix followed by 0 followed by 8. Let me not use hexadecimal because we didn't formally discuss hexadecimal representation in the class. So there is some prefix digits followed by 0, 8. And then the next address is 09, the next address is 10, the next address is 11. The array element, these 4 bytes, they are allocated to the array element a of 0. These 4 bytes, they are allocated to the array element a of 0. And the array element, the address starting from 12, this is the base address of the next element, 12, 13, 14, this is 15, and let's say it keeps going like this. So these 4 bytes, they are allocated to the array element a of 1. So an array element a of 2, it is allocated, its memory starts from the address which starts with 16. So this is 8. So this corresponds to a of 0. So on and so forth. Anyway, so it is here. Yeah, so this is the code I'm there is a good question. Does the address change when you recompile? Okay, clear all my drawings. Okay. Couple of interesting questions. First question is array layout. Okay. Are you all with me on this before I take the next set of questions? Are you with me on this idea? How memory for different elements in an array is allocated? Okay, Chinmay, go ahead and
Sir, can you hear me?
yes, yes, correct.
So did you use %p and lu to get the hexadecimal address, or
No, no,
which
percent p
placeholder did you use?
for percent p to print the address in hexadecimal form, percent lu to just print it in decimal form only.
So does %p like always return in hexadecimal, or?
I think so, yeah. It's always prints
Okay,
in hexadecimal.
okay, sir.
Next, so next question is whether, let's try here. Now, if you see the address of a of 0 is different from the address of a of 1, but broadly speaking, they will fall in some address range. It changed without even recompiling. That's true. Even without recompilation, the address of the variables change. And if I run again, the address changes. So this is one question. The second question is, what happens to the initial values of these variables int a of n? And so let's try to print them. So let's try to print them. And so let's see percent d and see what is. So there is one thing I want to tell you. So you should know when there is a particular idea is being discussed, you should try to see what to focus on and what to ignore. Okay, that's a very critical thing when you are trying to learn some new ideas, and otherwise you just get bogged down by too many things. Like for example, right now, what is it that we are trying to understand? What we are trying to understand is how is the main memory map associated with an array data structure. But all of you are so just bogged down on class 1 on what are the format specifiers, sir. What is %d, what is %p, what is %lu. So why are we using %p as against %lu? So all these things, uh, they are there. So you should know, no, these questions are important, and we will try to understand why we are using this maybe later by looking at the textbook, by doing few experiments by ourselves. But by kind of turning your mind away on no different direction, you are missing the point of the current lecture. Do you understand what I'm saying? It is important because uh, when you are trying to read something, when you are trying to uh, grasp some idea, you should know what to abstract away for the time being and what to actually get to the depth and understand. So what is it the thing that you need to kind of say, take it for granted? Okay, we are printing the address of the array element a of I. And we are seeing where the memory for a of 0 is allocated, where the memory for a of 1 is allocated. Are they contiguous? Are they non-contiguous? What are they initialized to? These are the questions that we would like to understand, right? So it is like this. When you are trying to read an English passage, you try to understand the essence of the passage. You don't try to worry, whether comma should be kept here or semicolon should be kept there, and then you get lost in the punctuation symbols, etc. Okay, so this is an important thing to learn. So, and I printed the contents. So here, this is the content of different, this is the content of A of 0, A of 1. So these are all garbage values. These are all garbage values. If I run it again, they will be printed to different. These are all garbage values. There is no reason, it can be anything. So the memory associated there will be initialized to some random zeros and ones depending upon which program that is executed before and what is present in that memory location before. So there is no specific reason why they are coming like that. All we say it is they are garbage. They are not random, they are garbage values. Why is A2 and A3 0? I don't know. Please check. It's why is the last number increasing by 1? You are seeing some patterns, I guess, but I don't know exactly why these things are coming like this. I don't want to spend more time on this, but all I want you to understand is these are, you cannot rely on them. You cannot rely on them. But if you want to initialize this array to a specific value, like for example, you want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There are 10 array elements, and this is how, let's say, yeah. So 1, 20, 40, 50. So let's say this is our initialization. Let's see what happens. So now these array elements are initialized to the values that we have specified here. This is how we initialize the arrays. So let's say if the size is less, there are 10 elements in the array, but the last element we didn't specify. Let's see what happens. The last element is initialized to 0. And that is, if you want to initialize all the elements in the array to 0, then I guess you can just say 0. Then all the elements in the array will be initialized to 0. Anirudh has this question. After we recompile, are they deleted from the previous memory addresses? So after a program uses a particular chunk of main memory, that memory is released and some other program, it could be allocated. Let's say this is your RAM. This is your whole memory. So in this memory, let's say this part of the memory is allocated to your program. This is not exactly how it happens, but roughly say this part of physical memory is allocated to the program. And after your program uses that memory and exits, the same chunk of memory, it's nothing like the memory is deleted. It's just that release it to the free pool. And this memory could be allocated to some other program. Are you with me here? All I want you to, I am trying to make it simpler here. When a program goes for execution and becomes a process, some amount of memory is allocated to that program. And after the program exits, that memory is released back to the operating system. And the operating system assigns that memory to some other program which is up for execution. Are you with me on this particular idea before I take up the next set of questions? That when a program goes for execution, certain amount of memory is allocated to that program by the operating system. And after the program finishes execution, the memory that is allocated to the program, it is available to the free pool. and the operating system allocates the same memory to some other program. And the garbage values that you see when you print, to some extent, they depend on what is the previous program that is occupying that place in the memory. So now there are a few questions on initialization. In order to get a very detailed understanding about, won't they be, Kishore has this question, won't they be zeroed out before given to a new program? I'm not sure, Kishore, before that memory is assigned to new program, whether it is zeroed out or not, I am not sure. I think you should check on it and let me know if you find some information. Yes, yes, for security reasons. Like for example, in that memory, you could be storing some important key or something like that. And if the same chunk of memory is allocated to some other program, that program may be able to read your secret key, and there could be issues. So arrays are never split. So an array is allocated always consecutively, memory consecutively. All the array elements, they are laid out consecutively in the memory. So again, so now this is the basic idea behind arrays. What I would like you to do is I want you to take a look in the textbook. Now we will look at different programs, but there are different nuances in array initialization. So if you take a look at the textbook clearly mentions what are the different ways in which you can initialize the arrays and things like that. But the core idea behind arrays is what you have seen just now. Can we use operations while signing? Yeah, we can use operations, you will see. No, not in the initialization. So in the initialization, again, so these questions like whether we can use expressions in the initialization of arrays, all these questions, please check in the textbook. I'm not sure. But usually we use constant values. I don't think we can use expressions to initialize arrays. All right. So let's go back. So this is about array, the memory layout associated with the arrays. So now since we are here, I also want you to see one more idea. So we can have 2D arrays also, or 3D arrays also. 2D array. 2D. So here, in order to make it simple, let's say n is equal to 2. So when 2D arrays, what happens is your array is a 2D structure, but the memory, your main memory, is a linear array of bytes. So this two-dimensional structure has to be mapped to a linear array of bytes. So if you look at this array, it's a 2 by 2 array. This is so 0, 1. Think of this as a matrix 0, 1, 0, 1. So here, so this element is a of 0, a of 0. This element is a of 0, 1. So this is what is called as a row index. And this is a column index. And this element is a of 1, 0. And this element is a of 1. And what happens is in the memory, so in the memory, so you can, so these are 4 elements. So let's call, for the sake of simplicity, let me use a simpler notation. So this is A00, A01, A10, A11. So this two-dimensional array, it is mapped in the memory as a linear sequence of bytes. And this is stored in what is called as a row major order. So this is mapped to, this 2D array is mapped to a linear array, one-dimensional array of which looks like this: A00, A01, A10, A11. And this mapping is what is called as a row major mapping, row major order. That means you go first in the memory, you first store the first row, and then you, after that, you store the second row. So from the hardware in the first class itself, we have this abstraction that we think of memory as a linear array of bytes. So what happens here is in the memory, if you see A00 will be allocated here, and A01 will be here, and A10 will be here, and A11 will be here. And remember, A00, it will be allocated 4 bytes because on this machine for integers 4 bytes are allocated. And so what we are doing is, so here this 1 is allocated, this A00 is initialized to 1, this is A00, and this is A01, okay, so this is 1, and this is 0, and this is A10, and this is A11. This is how, that means in the memory, I will use a different color. So 1 is present here, 0 is present here, 0 is present here, 1 is present here. I just did it because we are initializing a 2 by 2 identity matrix, 1001. So here we are initializing this to a 2 by 2 identity matrix. It can be anything. Are you all with me here? How a two-dimensional array is mapped to a linear array? Are you all with me? And one more, yeah. So there is one more ordering which is used in different programming languages, but not in C, which is called as column major ordering. Column major ordering. So in column major ordering, what happens is you store first column A00, A10, and after that you store second column A01 followed by A11. So in Fortran programming language, which is there before, long before C has come, and which is still popular, so column major ordering is used. Okay, so there are two kinds of mapping. There are two ways of mapping an array, a two-dimensional array, to a linear, to a single-dimensional array or a linear sequence of bytes. One is by using row majoring ordering technique, which is used in C. There are other programming languages such as Fortran, which use column major ordering technique. So now let's try to print. If you're all fine so far, let's try to print. So now we want to print the address of different elements. So we have to use a 2D loop for j is equal to 0. This is the first 2D loop that we are seeing. J less than n plus j What happened? Sorry, missed it. We need to declare J2. Great. All right. Now let's go and see what happens. GCC 2D array layout.c. IJ. Oh, okay. Thank you. So that's what happens when you do cut, copy, paste and forget to change. And I think if you want to write multi-line code, so you can use this. I don't know if it works or not. How do we write multi-line code? Only this. Okay. Yeah. So I don't want thing to go out of the screen. So I'm just using this multi-line. I'm splitting the printf statement so that it goes in multiple lines. So what is happening here is, in order to make it clear, so this I here corresponds to this one, and okay, and this j corresponds to this %d. So we are printing a of ij, and we are this address corresponds to this %p. We want to print the address in the hexadecimal format, and this address corresponds to this %lu, which helps in printing the address in regular decimal format. And here we are printing the contents of the array element a of ij. This is how the values are mapped to different format specifiers. Now let's run the program and see what happens. Great. So now you can see very clearly, this is 36 is the address associated. Just look at the whole of this prefix is the same, so don't pay attention to them. So the memory location 36, 37, 38, 39. So if you look at A of 00, 4 bytes by 36, 37, 38, 39, they are allocated to A of 00, and A of 01 is allocated address 40, 41, 42, 43, and A of 10 is allocated 44, 45, 46, 47, and A of sorry, this is 11. It is allocated 48, 49, 50, 50. Are you all with me here till this point? Good. Okay, then let's move on. Yeah, this is the code. Tane? Great. So now we will take one more program. Yeah, let's say array1.c. So here in this program, we are reading a sequence of 10 numbers from the input. So you can see on line number 11 to 14, we read 10 numbers from the input and we store these 10 numbers in the array elements A of 0 to A of 9. And on line 16, from line 16 to line 20, we have a code in which we are iterating through the elements of the array and we are summing them up. So the initial estimate of the sum is 0, and after we see every element, we accumulate that the value into the sum variable, and so finally after we come out of line 20, we have the sum of all 10 variables available. And then on lines 24 to 29, so this is what we would like to compute the max of the elements. We say max is equal to A of 0, and so here, remember, here we are starting on line 25, we are starting with I is equal to 1. So the current estimate, before we enter the for loop, the current estimate of the max we say as A of 0, and after we see each element, we keep improving our estimate. So there is this question, can this be done using just one loop? Yeah, it is possible to do it using just one loop, definitely. So now let's run this program. So GCC array1.c. So yeah, so now let's say we have this, we are giving the input from text, from a text file, minus 34, 40. Okay, so text masks dot text, maybe we can, yeah. So here what happens is the program, there are 10 integers here. So we supply input to our program from this text file, and let's see what happens. So if you see the input is supplied to this program via this text file, and there are 10 lines here. So what happens is after the max of this is 232, and the sum of this you have to check it whether it is 576 or not, you have to check. What if there are more than, so let's say that's a good question, that's where I want to, so what happens is if there are more than 10 numbers in the text file, they will be ignored. So on line 11, we have 2320. It is the maximum, right? But if you run it, it will still get as 232. So it will be ignored. And but again, you can give the input here also. So like 1, 12. You can give in any random order, it doesn't matter. So after 10 values are read, so thus their sum and max will be computed. Are you with me on this program? Is it all right? Do you understand how this program works? How we are reading the data into an array and we are working with the array subsequently. I have one very interesting thing for you to consider, and I will give one homework problem in lab 4 based on this. So if you see this code, let me split the screen, view. So if you see this code, pay attention here. what is the difference between the program that you are seeing on the left in array1.c and the program that we are seeing on the right in max.c? Between these two programs, just focus on, let's say, the computation of the max. Between these two programs, which one is the better? So Kush says max.c is good. So why is it? So yeah, the reason is if you look at the max.c program, it uses only one variable max. The memory required to compute the maximum of a stream of variables, it is just 4 bytes. Maybe if you include n and other ret values, it's just maybe 12 bytes. But on the contrary, if you see the program array1.c, we are storing the whole sequence in the memory, and then we are computing the max. So let's say if you are trying to compute the max of 1 million numbers, the memory required by the max.c program is still 4 bytes, but whereas the memory required by this array program, it will be 4 million bytes, because you want to store all these million elements in an array. Are you with me on this important difference? This is very, very interesting difference. It will have a huge impact in some programs. The program max.c, it just requires 4 bytes to compute the max of million elements, whereas the program array program, it requires 4 million bytes to compute max of elements. So, but the approach that we have taken in max.c to compute the maximum from a huge amount of data by using very constant amount of memory. And also one more thing I want you to make a note. So that memory required by the first program, this is proportional to n. Memory required by this program is proportional to n. It is proportional to n. That is, as the number of elements increase, the memory requirement changes accordingly, but the memory requirement here is constant. It is constant. So whether you want to compute max of 1 million elements or 10 million elements, you still require 4 bytes. So any program which requires a constant memory requirement independent of the size of the data that it is working with, it is a fantastic program. Imagine, let's say if you want to find to compute some function of a series of numbers, and the size of that data is 1 terabyte. Okay, so and your main memory is only in the order of gigabytes. So you will not be able to compute that function using the available memory that you have. But if you have an alternate program which is able to do the same computation using constant amount of memory, that is fantastic. Counter doesn't require much memory. Are you all with me here? This constant memory requirement versus linear memory requirement. This is what is called as a linear memory requirement. Linear means as the size of the data increases, the memory requirement also increases. Like for example, if this is the graph, this is the data size. As the data size increases, this is the memory requirement. Then it goes like this. But whereas here, if you see, it will be like this. So there will be one problem that I will be giving to you in today's, maybe I'll release it today, is like I will give an some intro to the problems so that we can think about it later. So we are able to compute max, we are able to compute sum using constant amount of memory. Can you think of any other function which you will not be able to do in such a straightforward way, where you are forced to use more than constant memory? We can find min also in constant memory. Can you think of functions? The question is, can you think of functions which require more than constant memory to compute them? I will post this. There is a programming problem associated with this. I will post it on the course model. Okay, so I'm getting some answers. So we will revisit it. So I will, but I just want you to compare and contrast between these two programs for the time being. Great. So now let's go back and we will see one program before we conclude today's lecture. So that is the character histogram. So here is, okay, let's move on. So I will post a couple of programming problems today on Moodle, which requires you to think about this memory space requirement, memory requirement when you are designing programs. Great. So here is a program called a character histogram or letter frequency problem. So we want to compute the frequency with which different characters come in English language text. So the program here is, so here on line 5, we are declaring an array called as a letter hist, which keeps track of the frequency with which different characters are occurring in an English language text. And we have initialized that array to 0. So this is, we have initialized that array to 0. And there is another variable index, and there is a count variable, there is a character C. And on line 9, what we are doing is we are reading one character at a time from an input stream, and we are checking if that character is a capital letter. Let's say if the character is that we have read is A, then what this will result is it will, so index is equal to, if the current character that we have read is A, then, then the index value will be set to 0. But on the contrary, if the current value that we have read is capital B, then what happens is, so B minus A, the ASCII value associated with B, I think it is 66, and the ASCII value associated with A is 65. So 66 minus 65 is equal to 1. So index value is equal to 1. Are you with me on this one? So if the character is if it's not a capital letter, but if it is small case letter, so then then the control comes here. And again, we do the same thing. We compute whether the index associated with that character, and if it's neither a capital letter nor a lowercase letter, then we just ignore that letter. And on line 18, we increment the counter associated with that particular letter. And this count plus plus, it counts the total number of characters that we have seen in the input stream. And finally, when the input stream ends, we come out of this while loop. And then from line 22 or 23 to 25, we print the histogram. What is the frequency with which different characters are coming? So here we are, you can see here, there is an interesting thing. So here we are showing when I is equal to 0, we print A. When I is equal to 1, we print B, and the particular expression that we are using to print different characters, please make a note of it. And then we are printing the frequency, and then this is no, the actual normalized by count. This is what it is. Are you with me on this program? So this program is not case sensitive, because whether it is capital A or small a, we just use, we just think of it as an A, that's all. Are you all with me on this program? Is there anyone who has trouble understanding this program? Any reason for picking 26? How many alphabets are there? I thought 26 only, no? 26 characters. That's the reason we picked 26. So few questions, let's see. I'll answer them. What does line 5 does? On line 5, we are declaring an array of 26 of size 26. It is an integer array, and we are initializing each and every element of this array to 0. That's what we are doing on line 5. And then there is one more question. What are we doing in the last 3 lines? I just want you to line 18. So let's say if index is equal to, let's say the current character that is seen is A, then index will become equal to 0. Then you go to the 0th element of the array, you increment it. It corresponds to character A. If the current element, the current character that is seen is either small b or capital B, the index will be equal to 1. So the corresponding element in the letter hist array will be incremented. That's what happens. And here, what we are doing is we want to print the character, the frequency with which that character appeared in the text, and so we are normalizing it by dividing it by count. Okay, to compute the percentage of the percentage frequency with which the character has occurred in the text. That's what we are doing using this expression. Remember the precedence. So this is nothing but first this will be computed, and then whatever that we get, it will be multiplied by 100. And you also have to remember we are using a float type to count. Otherwise, if you use an integer, it gets zeroed out. Okay, because integer divided by integer, then it will be truncated to an integer. Yeah, it's better to use yeah, this is good to show the precedence. I will do it. So if I is equal to 0, A will be printed here. If I is equal to 1, the value returned will be 66, which is the ASCII character associated with B, and B will be printed. If I is equal to 2, then the value of this expression will be 67, which is the ASCII character value associated with C, and C will be printed. Okay, so there is a question. Yeah. So what are we doing here? Let's think of this program as, let me do one thing. Let me first run the program. I will show you, and then I will explain the code again. Okay, this is gcc char hist.c .a.out less than text input. So this is what it does. In the given text, the character A, small or bad, it occurred 70 times, and the percentage, it occurred in the percentage is 8.7%. and B occurred 4 times, the percentage is 0.5, and E occurred 103 times and its percentage is 12.8%, so on and so forth. This is the, and Z didn't occur at all. So let's see, you want to see text input or text. So this one, the other day I just copy pasted some article, some para in New York Times and just randomly chosen it. Okay. So in order to make it more, yeah, so this is how the text looks like. Okay, so now I want you to, again I'll recap what this code consists of. So what are we doing on, so we are maintaining an array of, an array with 26 elements. The type of each element is integer and we are initializing it to 0. So there are a couple of questions being asked. So let me first recap the code, go through the code one more time, and then I will take your questions. And then in the code from here to here, we are checking whether the character that is being read, whether if it is a small a or capital A, it doesn't matter. Both will be treated as the same. Similarly, whether if it's a capital Z or a small z, it doesn't matter. Both will be treated as the same. Let's say if the current value that is being read is capital Z, then control comes here. So capital Z minus capital A, you take the ASCII value of capital Z and the ASCII value of capital A, and when you subtract it, I think you will get 25. So scanf, what this means is, as long as scanf is able to successfully read a character, it keeps reading. But if it encounters an end of file like control D or something like that, then it will return saying that it's not able to read any character. That's what line 9 is doing. So if it's a small character, again, no small letter, you come here and you do the same, you compute the index. And if it is none of the alphabet letters, then you come to continue and you don't do anything. So you are not even incrementing this letter histogram. And then from line 22 to 25, you are actually printing the histogram on the screen. Eraser, clear all my drawings. If you put a number in the text, nothing happens, yes, because it will be read as a character. Even a /n is a valid character, so nothing. Can you explain the index part? Control D, yeah. See, there are two things here. Let's say you run it here. So A, B, C. See, all these things, the program keeps repeating. These are all supplied to the program. And in order for us to be able to stop, you have to, let's say, if I press 1 also, 1 is also read as a character. So it's no problem. Okay, the scanf is not going to come out just because you have pressed 1, because 1 is a valid character. Or even if you press 123, it also doesn't matter, because 1, 2, and 3, they are read as separate characters. So in order to come out of the loop, if you press Control D, control D is not treated as a character, so scanf comes out of, scanf will come, if you see here, when I pressed control D, so scanf failed, so we came out and we came to line 22 and the whole program executed. So nothing happens, I think. Let's see. So if you do, I pressed enter, and when we enter a character like 1 or /n, so count was 0, so because of that. So I want you guys to explore this program. I made this code, the whole code, all the codes that we have used so far in the class. I pushed out on the GitHub, and the handle is available to you. Please go through this program and see how this is all working. So what I will do is I will just show you one thing, and then after that I will take questions from all of you. Okay. So this, I took a random article from New York Times, not the complete article, just a few paras from New York Times. And this is the, what happened? What is test underscore? No, this is not test max. This will be text here. So you can see, so line, you can see the character E, it is occurring with 12.8%. And after that I was so surprised, because I was looking, I just looked online to see what is the letter frequency table from which is computed by others. It turns out that the frequency of letter E is 12%. And here you can see the frequency of letter E is 12.8%. And this is a random text that I have picked from New York Times. And similarly, if you see A is occurring with 8.7% in this text. And if you go and see, it is 8.12%. Similarly, if you see D is 4.32%. Let's see here, it is 5.3%. Can you, if you want to experiment, so can you paste some random, one of you can paste a random text here from Hindu or some article, and we can compute the histogram and see how it works. Or maybe I will do it from Hindu. I did it from New York Times. So let's see if it's the same case with Hindu. It's not coming. So let's say I copy, Control N, Control V, Z, Control S, Hindu.text. It's okay, it's an approximation. I think there is a, So now if we, I picked some random article from Hindu, and no, letter E is occurring with frequency 10.8 and letter A is occurring with frequency 9.3, so on and so on. Okay, so let's say Mugundan has some huh, interesting. I'm just copied in the same file. Yeah, so A is occurring with 9% and E is occurring with 12%. D is occurring with 3.9%. Okay, good. Anyway, I think I'll, okay, so let's take this one, what Aaron has, and hey, E is occurring with 0 in the, is there something wrong? Because how can E come with 0? Interesting. Nice, nice. Good, good, Aaron. Yes, I'm very impressed. Awesome. Good. Okay. So anyway, this is interesting. So one thing, in order to conclude today's lecture, I'm very happy to see the way this, to see the last example. It's very interesting. So one thing I want you to notice, so earlier, when we were kids and when we want to encrypt data, that's one of the simplest things that we do is, we take A and we map it to some random character, F, and then we take B, and then maybe we map it to E, and then we take C and we map it to G, like that. So we can use some kind of mapping and to encrypt a text. So we take this mapping, we take a text, and we replace wherever A occurs with F, so on and so forth. And we think it's hard for, for the people to see, because if you see the number of permutations, there are 26 factorial permutations that are possible. So it's not possible for anyone to try out 26 factorial permutations, which is a humongous number. So we think this is a very safe encryption scheme. This is, I think, what is called as a substitution cipher or Caesar cipher. But what happens is, if they take the text and do a simple letter frequency analysis, and if they see, like, for example, so let's say D is mapped to some H and E is mapped to Z. And if they see, for example, Z is occurring with some approximately 12% frequency, then they can immediately say, you know what, Z could be mapped to, the mapping for Z is E. So like that, you can use the basic simple letter frequency analysis to break the substitution cipher. I think this is substitution cipher. Are you with me on this explanation that we can use uh, the substitution cipher to kind of encrypt text, and this mapping is your secret? What is the secret here? Your mapping is your secret key, and only the other party, your partner, knows the secret key to decrypt. But anyone who gets an encrypted text, they can use the letter frequency analysis to figure out what is it got mapped. Are you all with me here? Are you happy with today's lecture? Is it all right? So some of you, I guess, have questions on the code. The code, I have made it available. And so please go through the code. Yeah, so I'm also very happy with Aaron's text. So impressed. So if Aaron is here, I would have given no some chocolate or something like that. So virtual chocolate to Aaron for making or claps. So for coming up with such interesting text. Good. An interesting homework would be giving us a task to write some cipher. Okay, I will keep that in mind, Naman. I will see. Okay, so someone said they have one question. So what is that question? For today's lecture, we are kind of done. But if anyone has any concluding questions to ask, I will be happy to take them. Just want to but if you want to drop off, you can drop off. So the class is over. But if anyone has questions, I can take the questions and clarify. Is there a way to clear screen in the code?